Hi guys, hi, hello. So what we got going on today is, yesterday was Watergate, the crazy mess that was the end of Nixon's time in the White House. We concluded the Watergate scandal with Nixon resigning, and of course, through that muddled mix-up mess, we're going to get a new president, and not the one that we would have expected, considering that the line of succession had been used not more than once at this point. So we're going to talk about Gerald Ford. He is not in office long, but we will chat about him briefly, and then we're going to talk about Jimmy Carter, and our two different guys coming in to the White House to lead us to the end of the 70s. At the end of today, I've got some work to be completed, and you're going to have your first official Unit 6 assignment, which will be posted to Classroom. So here we go. Notebooks out. So we're going to talk about Ford. Gerald Ford was the president never meant to be president, meaning he had no ambition to get to this position. He found himself as president of the United States through a series of strange twists and turns. Of course, first there was the forced stepping down of Spiro Agnew, Nixon's vice president, due to his charges with him accepting bribes. So Ford was promoted from Speaker of the House to vice president. And then before his term is over, Nixon is going to resign before he can be impeached. So Ford finds himself in the White House, and when he's there, he's never shy about the fact that he's a Ford, not a Lincoln, meaning that he's going to work hard and he's going to try his best, but he had no grand scheme to become president. So he's just going to try to do what he can. One of the first things that Ford does as president of the United States is pardon Nixon. Your homework is going to have to do with this. He grants Nixon an official pardon, or gives him basically forgiveness for his role he played, whether he's innocent or guilty, and they're letting him off the hook. September 8th, 1974. And now, with that out of the way, Gerald Ford is presented with all the problems that Nixon was trying to deal with. So you've got stagflation. It persists, actually gets worse throughout Nick Ford's administration. It's going to get a little bit worse. So we see here that, again, the problems that Nixon was trying to fix really, again, it was tough. Of course, Ford is going to again and get an administration advisors around him to help him try and come up with his own plan, because Nixon's weren't working. It gets the nickname the WIN program. It's whip inflation now, which is I guess a more clever name than what we see in some of our other presidents' naming possibilities here. In the end, it's a failure. It doesn't work, but it's an attempt. What the WIN program was trying to have us do as American people is to cut back on our oil and gas usage, to try and basically help as much as possible with our gas shortage that's going on, and to encourage the American people, specifically amongst businesses, to try and utilize energy saving measures, things like that, anything that they can. The problem with WIN, where it could have helped or at least lessened some of the stress here, is there were no incentives for people to do this. So they didn't offer them like tax breaks or, again, something to help them or motivate them. And people are seldom going to do stuff just out of the goodness of their own heart. Um, when that didn't work, he continued to cut spending, he increased interest rates, but unfortunately, we find ourselves in the United States in the worst recession we've had in 40 years. Since the Great Depression ended, we'd been doing okay, but economies rise and fall all the time, and we find ourselves falling. Um, as far as the other parts of Ford while he is in office, one is that even if he wanted to try other things, wanted to try and pass other laws or to change other things that have been happening here, he's having a really tough time getting anything passed because he doesn't have the clout that Nixon did, and he's fighting against a Democratic majority Congress. And every time he puts something out there for them to pass or to veto, 50 pieces of legislation are going to get thrown out in this exchange between the legislative and executive branches, part of our, again, checks and balances. Foreign policy wise, Ford, I mean, again, he has his swings and he connects, and sometimes he doesn't. He's going to be fortunate enough that Kissinger is going to stay on even after Nixon is gone, and using realpolitik and using the detente measures, they're going to be able to continue to improve our relationship with the USSR. The Helsinki Accords promotes this greater cooperation between the Eastern and Western European countries. Of course, this is just another stage in which our relationship with the USSR, it's showcasing that we're getting a little bit better. Also some misses. Again, there is a hostage situation that happens in Cambodia, thinking this is, again, mid 70s, that the Cambodia has gone through or is in the midst of a civil war themselves, where some Americans get captured. There are 39 people captured and 41 people die in the rescue. We get a lot of those hostages back, but there's still a lot of casualties. So, again, Ford, like I said, tries his best. Unfortunately, he's working at a disadvantage, that's for sure. It's not long until he's going to be replaced by one Mr. Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter is an interesting man to replace Gerald Ford just because he's relatively unknown. He is probably most infamously known as being a peanut farmer. He was the former governor of Georgia, and during his campaign, he spent a lot of time talking to the American public about how he wants to restore the presidency to its former standards. He's very well known for being very honest, being very open. Again, he oftentimes talked about never tells a lie, so on and so forth. And when he enters the White House, securing the election, he is going to focus a lot of his attention on the energy crisis, the fact that we rely too much on foreign oil, and where Gerald Ford failed to change some of our energy consumption. Carter is going to be successful. He is a Democrat. So the Congress is going to work with him on a lot more stuff. So the National Energy Act is going to put an extra tax on gas guzzlers, so cars that consume a lot of gasoline. It removes price controls on the United States, where we have energy. There is some oil left. We tapped out most of our reserves in the main part of the country, but Alaska has more. Natural gas as well. It also is going to provide incentives for more alternative energy resource, so or research. So trying to find other ways to get energy besides just gasoline. A problem here, though, is that our foreign, I guess, relationships, it just makes things a little bit tougher. Our gas shortage is going to get worse before it gets better, and inflation is going to increase because of that. There's a second major crisis. Another war breaks out in the Middle East, and OPEC, again, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, are going to hike the prices, and it makes it even worse for us to be able to get gasoline. The standard of living across the country is going to drop, and unemployment continues to rise. So this recession, which again we keep electing leaders to try and fix it, it's not seeming to get fixed. So we're seeing here that foreign competition continues to cut into our markets, make it harder for us to get products sold, to be successful. The service sector is on the rise, so there's this big transition happening from blue collar manufacturing jobs into white collar service jobs. And a lot of people are losing their jobs because of it. And those people, as they lose their jobs, they're having a tougher time finding a new job that they are qualified for, because most white collar service jobs require a bit more education, experience. So the whole job market is more complex. There's more competition for jobs because you have a lot of people losing their jobs. It's just a it's tough all around. The 1970s economically is it's a low point for us, and it's not going to be until the 80s where things start to turn around. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So that's it for notes. All right. So work you've got to get completed for this week. Keep checking. We'll have notes tomorrow, the next day, so on and so forth. Assignment, you'll see posted to Classroom. This assignment, it has to do with the pardon. And again, what I'm looking for here is opinions. So you're going to be looking at a handful of different perspectives regarding this pardon that Gerald Ford grants Nixon after Watergate. You're going to evaluate it a little bit. You can look back at your notes from yesterday about Watergate and then creating your own opinions on the worksheet that's there. Big thing, complete sentences, the whole thing, please and thank you. And you'll be submitting through Classroom. The other thing is that, just as a reminder, and I'll remind you each day, again, I will accept local history through the end of the week, remembering that each day more points get lost from that overall submission. I will not accept anything after 3 p.m. on Friday. Please email me with questions or concerns. I hope you guys all have